The Second Life of Margaret Walsh. The morning my daughter smiled at me with that particular smile, the one I'd seen her use on difficult clients at her law firm, I knew something fundamental had shifted between us. I just didn't realize she was about to steal my life. I was sitting in my hospital bed, 3 days after the stroke. My left side still wasn't responding properly, and words kept getting jumbled in my head before they reached my mouth. Jennifer stood there in her immaculate pantsuit, iPad in hand, nodding sympathetically while the doctor spoke. But her eyes, God, her eyes were already calculating. "Mum, we need to talk about next steps," she said after the doctor left. Not, "How are you feeling?" Or, "Are you scared?" Just, "Next steps," as if my life had become a project to manage. I should have seen it then. All of it. The way she'd been positioning herself for years. The comments about my forgetfulness long before the stroke. How she'd slowly been inserting herself into my financial affairs. But when it's your child, your baby, you don't want to see the predator they've become. I tried to tell her I wanted to go home, back to the house I'd lived in for 43 years, the one her father and I had bought when she was just a toddler. The words came out garbled. Home. Want. Go. Home. "Mum," she said with that patient tone that made me feel about 5 years old, "you can't possibly live alone anymore. The doctor said you'll need constant supervision. Remember?" I remembered. I also remembered that the doctor had said I could regain significant function with proper therapy, but Jennifer wasn't mentioning that part. 3 weeks later, I found myself being wheeled into Sunny Pines Care Centre. Not the worst place, actually quite nice with gardens and activities, but it wasn't my choice. It wasn't my home. "It's just temporary, Mum," Jennifer assured me as she efficiently unpacked my suitcase, the one she'd packed without my input, containing only about a quarter of the clothes I would have chosen. "Just until you're stronger." That night, alone in my new room with its beige walls and sanitized smell, I cried for the first time since the stroke. Not delicate tears, but ugly, heaving sobs that left me exhausted. My body felt like a betrayer, my daughter a stranger, and my life. My life felt like it had been snatched away while I was briefly unconscious. What I didn't know then was that Jennifer had already started the paperwork for power of attorney, that she'd already begun the process of selling my house, to pay for my care. That within weeks she would begin systematically dismantling everything I'd built over 73 years of living. I discovered this by accident 2 months later. My speech therapy was going well enough that when I overheard Jennifer on the phone in my room while she thought I was napping, I understood every word. "Yes, we should be able to close on Mom's house next month," she was saying quietly. "The market's hot right now, and we got 3 offers above asking." No, she doesn't know yet. The doctors think it's better not to agitate her during recovery. Of course, we'll set aside what she needs for care, but there should be plenty left for the kids' college funds. My heart stopped. My house. The house where I'd planted the rose garden, where I'd marked Jennifer's height on the kitchen doorframe, where I'd nursed my husband through cancer until he died, was being sold without my knowledge. And my grandchildren's education was apparently more important than my autonomy. I kept my eyes closed until she left. Then I sat up and stared out the window at the neatly trimmed Sunny Pines lawn, my hands trembling not from nerve damage but from rage. Pure, clarifying rage. That was the moment everything changed for me. The moment I realized that if I wanted any life at all, any life that was mine, I would have to fight for it. And to fight, I would need allies. The next morning at physical therapy, I met Eleanor, 81, recovering from a broken hip, sharp as a tack, and with the mouth of a sailor. "Your daughter sounds like a first-class bitch," she said bluntly after I'd struggled through my story. We were sitting in the sunny day room, supposedly doing hand exercises, but mostly talking. No offense. I laughed. Actually laughed. For the first time in months. None taken. She is. Eleanor leaned forward. "You need a lawyer, Maggie. Not just any lawyer, one who specializes in elder rights." "Jennifer is a lawyer," I said, the bitter irony not lost on me. "And she's got my power of attorney." Eleanor snorted. "Honey, power of attorney isn't a prison sentence. It can be revoked if you're competent." She tapped her temple. "And you, my dear, are getting more competent by the day." She wasn't wrong. My speech was returning. Slowly, with frustrating gaps and stutters, but returning. My left arm could now grasp objects. I could walk short distances with a walker. The fog that had filled my brain after the stroke was clearing, revealing not the confused old lady Jennifer was portraying to the world, but the woman I'd always been. Stubborn, strategic, and now, supremely pissed off. Eleanor introduced me to her nephew, a paralegal who came to visit the following week. He brought a laptop and a quiet determination to help. "What Jennifer's doing isn't just wrong, Mrs. Walsh. It could be illegal," he explained. "She has a fiduciary duty to act in your best interest, not hers. Selling your primary residence without your informed consent, especially while you're recovering cognitive function, that's troubling." For the next month, I lived a double life. To Jennifer, I was still the docile, somewhat confused mother who needed her decisions made for her. I let her think the slurring in my speech was worse than it was. I signed the birthday cards she brought me for relatives without reading them. I nodded when she talked about financial arrangements. But with Eleanor and a small group of allies I'd gathered at Sunny Pines, I was planning my resurrection. Rita, a retired accountant down the hall, helped me understand what Jennifer had done with my accounts. Walter, a former high school principal with a booming voice and perfect posture, made calls on my behalf when I couldn't be clearly understood on the phone. And Dottie, a 79-year-old former librarian, used her computer skills to help me set up new email and bank accounts that Jennifer knew nothing about. "We're like Ocean's 11, Dottie giggled one afternoon as we huddled in her room, "just with more joint replacements." The irony wasn't lost on me that in this place where I'd been sent to slowly fade away, I was becoming more alive, more connected, more purposeful than I'd been in years. The stroke had taken things from me, yes, but it had also, strangely, given me a clarity I'd been missing. 9 months after my stroke, Jennifer arrived for her weekly visit, iPad in hand as usual. "I've got good news, Mum," she said, sitting primly on the edge of my bed. "The house sale is final. We got even more than expected, so your care here is covered for, well, basically forever." I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw not my little girl but a stranger wearing my daughter's face. When had she become so calculating? Was it when her husband lost his job 3 years ago? When the twins' private school raised its tuition? Or had it always been there, this coldness, and I'd been too blinded by maternal love to see it? "That's wonderful, dear," I said, my voice carefully modulated to hide both my improved speech and my simmering anger. "And I've brought some paperwork," she continued, pulling documents from her leather portfolio. "Just some updates to your will and healthcare directives. The lawyer suggested we make everything crystal clear now that your situation has evolved." I nodded, reaching for the papers with my right hand, my strong hand, while my left lay seemingly useless in my lap. Of course, you've been so helpful. Her smile was satisfied, proprietary. She handed me a pen and pointed to the signature line on the first document. Without reading it, I signed, but not my name. Instead, I carefully wrote, "I know what you're doing." Jennifer's face when she read those 5 words. I'll treasure that moment until my dying day. Shock, then confusion, then a flash of something like fear before she composed herself. "Mum, what are you talking about? Are you feeling confused again?" I sat up straighter, meeting her eyes directly. "I'm not confused, Jennifer. I haven't been confused for some time. What I am is angry." The next hour was one of the most difficult and liberating of my life. I laid out everything I knew about the house sale, about the money she'd diverted, about the lies she'd told my doctors and friends about my condition. With each revelation, she grew paler, her denials weaker. "You don't understand," she finally said, her voice cracking. "The kids' school, the mortgage after Tim's layoff. I was drowning, Mom, and you have more than you need. I was going to pay it all back. By stealing my home, by trapping me here, by taking away every choice I had left." My voice was steady now, the words flowing clearly. "That's not borrowing, Jennifer. That's theft. And it stops today." I pulled out my own folder, one Eleanor had helped me prepare, and handed her the first document inside. "This is a revocation of your power of attorney, already filed with the court. My new lawyer will be contacting you about the house proceeds and the rest of my assets." I handed her a second paper. "And this is a note from Dr. Bennett confirming my cognitive competence to make my own decisions." Jennifer's face hardened, the vulnerability vanishing. "You'll regret this, Mum. You can't manage on your own. You know that. You've had one stroke. Statistics say you'll likely have another. Who's going to take care of you then?" It was the question that had terrified me most in the dark nights after my stroke. But now, strangely, it held no power. "I will," I said simply, "with help from people who respect me enough to ask what I want." After she left, storming out with threats of contesting everything, I sat quietly by my window, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. I felt hollowed out, but curiously peaceful. That evening, I joined my friends in the common room for our weekly poetry reading. When it was my turn, I pulled out the notebook I'd been scribbling in for months, halting phrases at first, then increasingly fluid thoughts as my brain rewired itself. "This is called Second Life," I said, and began to read. "They think because my body failed that I am failing too, that borders of my skin define the borders of my mind. They speak in gentle, simple terms, as if to soothe a child, while plotting how to slice away the parts of me they deem excess. But in this broken vessel now, I find a sharper sight. The second life that starts today is truly fully mine." When I finished, the room was silent for a moment before Eleanor reached over and squeezed my hand. "Hot damn, Maggie," she whispered. "You're a phoenix." 6 months later, I moved out of Sunny Pines into a small but accessible apartment. Jennifer and I still aren't speaking. Some wounds take longer to heal than others, and some never do. The money from my house is in a trust that she can't touch, managed by a fiduciary who actually listens to my wishes. My left side still doesn't work perfectly. I still use a cane, and sometimes words escape me. But those limitations feel like pebbles now, not boulders. My new home has wide doorways for my occasional wheelchair days, and a pull-out couch for when Eleanor comes to stay. There's a writing desk by the window where I work on the memoir I've started. Not just about the stroke and Jennifer's betrayal, but about the unexpected liberation that came after. Last week, a letter arrived from my granddaughter Sophie, Jennifer's oldest. She's 18 now and starting college in the fall. Mum told me I shouldn't contact you, she wrote, but I have questions only you can answer. Can we meet? I wrote back immediately. My door is always open. Some stories need to be heard directly from the source. This morning, watching the dawn break over my small balcony garden, I realized something that made me laugh out loud. My stroke, the thing I thought had ended my life, had actually saved me from a much quieter death. The slow fade into invisibility that happens when we let others define our worth, our needs, our very selves. I lost my house. I lost my daughter, at least for now. I lost some physical abilities that may never fully return. But I found my voice, and in the end, that has made all the difference.